Hi, hello, this is Abigail McGrath from Renaissance House. It's a retreat for writers on social issues in Oak Bluffs. And every year, for the past 25 years actually, we have produced the Frederick Douglass speech, What to the Slave is the 4th of July. Now people are talking about whether or not we should celebrate Juneteenth instead of the 4th of July. And Mr. Douglass's speech clearly points out to us that America cannot be free until the black man was free, right? And Juneteenth is about freed slaves not knowing that they were free. So neither one looks very good for people of color. Douglass was a man who risked his life for a principle. And tonight we're having a discussion, as we do at Renaissance House, among those who placed themselves in danger because there was a cause that they believed in. Kyle Williams. Well, I live up in the Highlands, and the first I ever heard about Kyle was from his mother, Jocelyn Walton. You know who she is, right? And she's been my neighbor in the Highlands since like before I was born. And all I ever hear from her is, "Oh, my baby Kyle this, my baby Kyle that. He's so special. He's such a righteous child." And then I found out baby Kyle's 50 years old, and so I thought, what has he been doing? And she said he had a community-based elementary school in Washington, D.C. He led the #1 youth basketball program in the country, taught school over 25 years at the Academy, how it's called, Kyle, tell me.
Community Academy.
The Community Academy, but it's a charter school where he's worked for 17 years. And then he started this grassroots organization called A Long Talk About the Uncomfortable Truth, which is about racial equality. And it keeps growing and growing and growing, and nobody has stopped it yet. So, oh yeah, by the way, he's also raised 3 basketball playing sons who I saw, and they're very cute and very sweet. So Jossie was right. He is special. So, okay, Kyle, let's talk about racial equality, which we sort of touched on already. And there have been people on the top and on the bottom since day one, right? So what makes you think you're going to change that? What makes you think you're going to even that playing field?
Well, I said you said something earlier about a reset button in America. Mm-hmm. And I believe that we've had a lot of different opportunities in this country where we could do the right thing. And what usually happened is that people stood up to show the right thing, but usually when the opposition came, it wasn't able to match its force.
Just didn't do it.
Through the course of history, Reconstruction era, but we've had just multiple moments. The civil rights movement that you talked about, we just haven't been able to finish the job. And I believe that 2020 gave us an opportunity to find out that people who really could care just needed to know. And you talked before about it was on live television. This literal knee on the neck of the black man in America. And for many people, it was the first time they saw it and believed it. For millions.
Yes, that's absolutely true.
For millions of other people, it was just a manifestation of what it feels like every day. And so when those two forces came together to match, things are changing in this country. And the reason we know that it's changing because there's such a tremendous pushback. You see, when I was coming up in the 80s and the 90s in New Jersey, it was this sense that things were so much better because there wasn't as many of the clashes in the streets or in the political fields. And now people are like, we're so divided now. And I say all the time, we're not more divided now as a country. It's just that white people are more divided. And so white people are being able to stand up and say, you know what? I know now, I didn't realize this. I'm gonna do something because I'm angry or because I have empathy for this. And that's a new time in America. And because there's so much pushback, I feel like we're at the end game. I really do believe because now there are so many people that are not just young black people like me, right? That there are people from all over over the country are coming together to have conversations, to actually put things in play, to be co-conspirators, to do something finally. And again, for me, I'm 50 years old. I've been doing this work my whole life in my community. I've been teaching and working with kids in the black community my whole life. But now over the last 3 years, I've been able to connect some dots, and over 13,000 people, 98% who are white, are now actively working towards the things that we've been talking about doing, and now we have a roll forward. So this is a new space that we've been in, for at least what I understand history to be.
A new space because you think, unlike the what was that period after the Civil War?
Reconstruction.
Unlike Reconstruction and all the hopes and dreams that we had during the 60s and all those marches that we went on, that this will cinch it. This time that everyone will be equal?
First of all, it's not even about equality first. It's about ridding this country of the evils of racism. So you can't start talking about equality until you eliminate the things that have made us unequal from the beginning. We've never had a movement in this country. We've been here hundreds of years, and we've never had an anti-racist movement in this country. You talked before about the Clean Air Act. And the reason I asked you specifically about that, it was a fringe movement.
Yeah.
And that fringe movement made it almost unfathomable that it might have a little smog and smoke in the air. Like America's going crazy because the sky is looking like 1970. You know what I mean? Like America's losing their mind today. But because of the actions of a few, there was change that now became normal, that our air was a little cleaner, our water was a cleaner. We've never had a fringe movement even of a true, connected, collected, anti-racist movement. We've never decided it's time to dismantle all the remnants of white supremacy. And if we do that collectively, and the people, not that look like me, but that look like them. Because if black people could have ended white supremacy, we'd have done it by now. So it's time for everybody to come to the front line and to push the buttons and hit the levers and bring down the change that I can't even reach.
So when you say white supremacy, what do you mean?
Wow, white supremacy is a basic belief. Historically, if you look at it over the last 500 years, things like the doctrine of discovery, when people were literally sent out from Europe around the world and said, exterminate all the brutes. Like if you land somewhere, you claim it in the name of Spain, and you can exterminate everybody. It doesn't matter literally what happened here on this island, right? And so when you talk about this myth that started from eugenics, I mean, there's a whole bunch of history of this where what happened in Germany, that there was this white Aryan race that was better than everybody else. And so all of these beliefs that have been able to continue to build systems, political systems, economic systems all around the world, the colonization of Africa. Like all these things are manifestations of white supremacy, but the remnants of it are that we as a people around the world believe that white people should be in charge of everything. And so it's this idea that when you walk into a boardroom, for instance, if I see majority white men, I think our company's in good shape. But if I walk in and see some Hispanics, some black women, it's just a little sense of insecurity. And that's the thing that permeates through all of us. And so it's big things, but it's also just this innate sense, this space that we've been in this country forever.
Because in the medical world, when I go into a hospital now, there are so many third world people and women. I keep thinking, oh, there must be something wrong with this hospital.
Yeah,
and I've been trained to think that.
Absolutely.
I've been trained to think that they are inadequate because they don't have, Richard Chamberlain or some sort of, movie star.
Absolutely. And that's what I mean. And see, racism and white supremacy, people think that is the worst of us. It's the norm of us. Things have been normalized so much that we don't even understand or recognize certain things. We can't even see different perspectives. You can literally go through life in America, as a white person, you can literally go through life in America and have nothing to do with black people or black culture at all.
And
live a successful.
There are people in Mississippi.
Matter of fact, there are some people that it makes you more successful to have no perspective to have nothing else to do. And again, you don't have to be mean about that. You don't have to be an angry, evil person to just decide, I think black people are beneath me and I'm going to live over here and do all this stuff. You don't have to be evil because society has told you that's how it's supposed to be. The television tells you, the movies tell you, the narrative tells you that.
Well, is that human nature?
No, that's
to want to be, what Len said before is you always want to have someone to put down and someone to bring you your coffee.
But here, and you're right. But here's the thing: when you've been told it's because of their skin color and that's all that matters, that's not human nature. That's manufactured. Because it could have been just people that were born with 6 fingers. We all had some friends that had that extra finger. Mm-hmm. That could have been the oppressed class, but that's not what they judged it on. They chose women And they chose people of color. So it's not normalized the way it happened in America. The results of it are not because that's what was manufactured. Black people, indigenous people, women were
Who
put in different
manufactured?
spaces.
Who's the manufacturer?
Well, I mean, we can go to the founding documents of the country.
So
the
you're
country,
saying,
literally,
yeah.
our country was founded as a white male supremacist nation, like full stop.
Or as a way to, in an economic way of making money that you couldn't do in Europe. In other words,
You
the
couldn't
Pilgrims who
enslave
came,
Africans in what do you mean?
when the Pilgrims came over, they didn't come over for religious reasons. They came over because they couldn't do business in Europe.
Okay.
So they came over here. And they had to say it was religious reason because they didn't want to say they were greedy, right? So that was the foundation, and profit, there you go, that's what I'm really saying, has been pretty much behind most of the thinking of those in power.
Absolutely.
So why would they want to give up that power?
Well, I think the first question you asked is about the foundation. I think you're right about that. It is about money, and what was able to be done was literally the economy of America was built off the backs of these Africans, the stolen land of the indigenous people, this forced labor, free labor of these Africans literally built the beginning of this country, right? Economically, before we even got to the Industrial Revolution, we had agriculture in the South.
So it's a way of thinking
It was a way of
that they had the right.
Absolutely. So when you ask about white supremacy gives me as a normal person the ability to rationalize that these people are literally beneath me so I can treat them humanely and go to church on Sunday. You see what I'm saying? And not only go to church, but preach at church on Sunday after I did this because they're not regular people. The same way they looked at the Jews. And here's the crazy part. Maybe people don't know this, but I think a lot of us do. Like, it's almost an apology that needs to go to Germany, to Jews in Germany from America, because we taught Adolf Hitler how to do that.
Yeah.
Like, that's historical fact. Adolf Hitler looked at America and said, wait a minute, you can get the whole country to agree to put down and oppress a particular race, and this is how you do it, here are the steps. And all he did was change blacks to Jews on the same propaganda, on the same thing. It literally happened that way.
South Africa. Tell them.
Well, I'll put it to you this way, on the South African tip, I mean, there's a whole, it's the same philosophy. It's the same, not even philosophy, it's the same ideology that some people are less than others. When people talk about Black Lives Matter, right? It's just the idea to say that our lives are equal to everybody else's. And the idea that that needs to be said out loud has been proven historically that if somebody doesn't say it, if no one does it normally, it's not going to be said. That's why, again, the normalcy of people seeing things and acting and just doing it. When we live in a country where things have happened, that knee has been on the neck forever.
But my question is it in the brain, the thinking of human beings? As Len pointed out, in India, they're the unwashables, and everyone has someone to put down. So how are we going to, it's not who is put down, it's the concept of having to put down.
Here's what it is.
How are you going to get rid of
You
that?
mentioned before about
go
ahead. It's human nature, yes, I agree with you.
I don't buy that. That is basically tribes, regardless of whether caste or what have you, but it developed in terms of fairly separate groups from one valley to the other at some point or another. And of course there was very much, there was a sense of us and a sense of them.
Us and them.
But how you look at them, that does not necessarily automatically include that it is disrespect, because you respect other human beings because of their quality as human beings, for crying out loud. And so much of that put upon, that you've got to have these others in order to put them down. That's only when you yourself don't feel so good about yourself.
I think you need to learn about other people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have members of my family that are, I have one late brother who was just to the right of Genghis Khan. I mean, and and a lot of my family I feel like a Martian in my family, and I've always felt, Americans should spend a year in New York City. It should be part of their sort of public service, because New York City is a reflection of the world, really. And people do live in communities in New York, and they live in affinity-related communities where they have a common language and common culture. They live in neighborhoods, and they do that, and they do that naturally. They don't do that because, because they're looking down at anybody. They do that because they're Italian, or they're Russian, or they're or whatever, or they're Jamaican.
To her point about how you look at someone, what doesn't have to happen is the hate,
Right.
the violence.
Right.
It can be the respect. And see, I agree with you. That's not normal human behavior.
Right.
Because we would have eliminated ourselves a long time ago if that was our natural reaction, to just be violent and hateful against people that weren't like us.
I
because
agree.
before this even construct of race came, we all lived on different. I mean, this is a whole diversity around the world.
And a
that we have to
child's
work
not
together.
born like that either.
Exactly.
A child's not born
So
with that.
I believe it's been the manufacturing. You talked about 80 people in the world owning more of the wealth than whatever percentage, 1/3 of everybody else in the world. And that's a real sense, because it's always been some very powerful people who have put these things in play. Again, I go back to the founding of the country. People, we all learned, you mentioned it earlier, we all, self-evident that all men are created equal, right? Given these rights and these liberties. But you have to understand, when they wrote those words, that literally only applied to like 1% of the population.
Yeah.
It was written for wealthy white men. If you look at the wording of the document, it says you had to be a propertied man. They didn't count anybody else. So you knew it was white men.
Well,
That
no,
means
it's
not
Shays
even
Rebellion.
regular.
I'm sorry, you know about Shays Rebellion?
Absolutely, yeah.
And as a result of that, they said you have to own property if you're going to, because
Right.
otherwise
We can't trust you.
Right.
You're not invested enough if you don't own it. But so you go back to this idea that America was birthed literally saying that we don't care about women's rights, we don't care about black people's rights, we don't care about indigenous rights, and we're gonna leave the religion stuff out because we can't all agree on that one, because we got different Protestants, all this stuff. So from the beginning we've been like that, and since there's never been a time to heal it, there's never been a plan to destroy it, we started at 100% white supremacy. What percentage are we at now? That's the question. Every single system in America began in 100% white supremacy. The education system, the legal system, the healthcare system. It was legal white supremacy in America until 1965. So bad so that you came over and immediately sensed it. As soon as you landed, you're like, oh, this is messed
I know
up.
this. I've
This
felt
feels like
before.
that.
Right.
As soon as you landed. But other people lived amongst it every day and denied it. Other people lived amongst it like, this is normal. What are you talking about? And that's the space that we have gotten past, where this next generation of kids is so not normal to them, and they're so angry about the fact that they've been given this legacy. And they're tired of it.
Yeah.
And they want to do something about it. And now part of going back to why I think this is possible is because one of the main reasons people didn't know to do anything about it is, one, they couldn't identify it. Because again, if you don't need to see all this stuff, why would I want to see the bad parts of America, right? And then if I do see it, I have no idea what to do. And I'm out here by myself. So what, am I gonna get into a fight about with Uncle Bob? You know what I'm saying? Like, because somebody said a joke, like what do we do with that? So because people didn't know what to do and didn't know what to see, even the good people just, man, I hope this place gets better. But now we have to change that. We gotta share and show. We teach. Our thing is real simple. We believe that information plus empathy equals action. People just don't know what has happened in this country. The truth has not been told. The narrative has been stolen. Once we do that and give that information, and we have an 80-minute video that starts my conversation, you have to watch before you can even come talk to me. You gotta watch this video called The History of Race in America. And then we can come talk about it. And then I can teach you a skill that you can understand how to push back the next time you hear a bad joke, the next time you hear some mean comment. And it just gives us all individually something we can do. I want millions of microaggressions in the opposite direction, so that every racist joke gets challenged. Every bad policy, somebody says, wait a minute, we didn't even talk about this part. Like that's activism. Those are the things that we need everybody to do and make it normal. That we can all just say, you know what, I just heard that joke, we're not doing that in here today. You gotta take that somewhere else. Instead of, oh man, I hope he doesn't come back tomorrow. Hope he doesn't. But if somebody keeps telling you a racist joke, it's because they think you like them. So until we step up and say something different, it's gonna keep happening. So now is the time for people to rise up and just decide to do the right thing. Like the things you did are amazing. Like you literally risked your life, literally, because you were so angry about something you learned about and you wanted to make it different. Same thing here. Like lives were risk. I'm just asking people to risk maybe being called woke by their friends to do something.
When you do that, and you know that activists in your position before have been assassinated, right? Do you think maybe I should pull back a little bit? I don't want to get them angry.
Listen, one of the things that everybody here has talked about, and this is one of the main things I think is that the human spirit, is being agitators for the right thing. Like you can't decide, and the reason why people don't think twice about stuff like this is when you know you're right, it's worth everything. Like I do this for my children, so how do I say, well, the heat's getting on? You think I haven't gotten already? I'm on Twitter talking to people all day about racism. I just ask people questions. I've gotten hate stuff, I've gotten all that. But that doesn't faze me. I feel like, first of all, if my biggest concern is in speaking about the things that have happened to my ancestors in the past, and that's the most work I gotta do, I can do that all day. I don't gotta actually get my ass kicked. I can just talk about it and share that. Yeah, I'm good with that. I'm showing up for work all day. So.
Well, yeah, but like, I'm sure the people at January 6th felt the same way.
That I feel?
Well,
as passionate about what they believe?
Passionate about what they believe in.
Here's the beauty.
And that the world is doing them in, and that they're the underdog.
And you're right, and we should be 100% aware that sentiment is rising in America, and it's going to get dangerous for everybody. You see, the thing about me is, the people that I work with and for, they're doing things behind the scenes. And what I mean by that is, I work with a lot of people who are in a lot of positions that can send an email and make change. Got to give it to you this way. One of the biggest things that happened during the Black Lives Matter movement, it happened like in the first week. Everyone was coming out. It was getting bigger and bigger and stronger, and they lowered the flag, the Confederate flag at NASCAR. And a lot of people kind of thought it was performative.
Yeah.
A lot of people kind of thought it was, but the signal that it sent around the country, people have been trying to get that flag off NASCAR for decades.
But what's the name of the driver?
Oh, that was different. That was the loose they put in Bubba Wallace. That was actually different. I'm talking about a white man walked into the meeting at NASCAR and said, "Today the flag comes down." Ooh. You see, that was a shot across the bow. Yeah. Because that showed that, because people kept showing up, everybody, black people, white people, old people, and they were like, this has to change. And when that hit, it was like, wait a minute, this is different. And ever since then, you've seen all the pushback against Black Lives Matter, against white people being woke, and all this whole rise of this stuff, because things were starting to change, and they continue to change. The very phrase
woke took a negative turn.
Anything, it's all about intimidation and fear and scare tactics. And they realize that one of the greatest things you can do to moderate white people is give them a nickname that they don't like. And if they don't want to be called that at the next party, they just not gonna say anything, not gonna do anything.
Right. We got a letter from Shirley Collier. Oh, and I just lost. Here it is. No, is this it? Yes, Shirley Collier. For me, the first driving principle is the fight against evil, as in hiding black history and the continuing assault on black lives. The second driving principle is love, as in black people learning to protect one another, stop undermining each other, and work cohesively to advance us all.
I would say actually the first one is that it's about ignorance. See, what I'm leading is a war on ignorance. Because all this stuff we wrote, anti-Semitism, sexism, anti-blackness, it all comes from the same source of ignorance. Now, if you throw some evil in there and some hatred, that notches it up a little bit, but it's all based on, again, I don't live next to you, I don't talk to you, I don't know who you are. So there's an ignorance of your history, of your culture. So I would put that first. Mm-hmm. The second part about black people, and this is something, I'm 51 years old. I've been involved in black activism my whole life, meaning my father, my mother, and not big time stuff, but just knowing who I am, teaching who I am, I've taught at black schools. Black people have the longest history of number two, of taking care of ourselves. Because you gotta understand, we've done more with less for longer than anybody on the face of the earth. See, black America is not supposed to be here anymore. You see, after slavery was over, there was no use for us anymore. We were 13% of the population then. We're 13% of the population now, because that's just us fighting against the tide of destruction. So what black people have accomplished amongst these odds, I get it, we can always do better. But I'm so proud of the way that we have mobilized our communities and adjusted and built something out of nothing. Because literally, we have nothing but scraps on the table in this country since we got here.
And we've turned those scraps into fabulous dishes.
Magnificent.
Pigs
Magnificent.
feet,
I'll give you an
giblets.
example of that. So I'm a child of hip hop. I'm 50 years old. Hip hop is 50 years old. I was born, I'm from Plainfield, New Jersey, the birthplace of P-Funk, Parliament Funkadelic. But at 50 years old, I would say that I've watched hip hop music and hip hop culture become America's greatest export. Hip hop is all around the world.
Yeah.
And not just the stuff that people don't know about hip hop, just the negativity of this that gets public. I'm talking about the soul of hip hop, the core of the community. All the stuff that I am comes from that culture. So I'm proud of the fact that we took scraps. We took some equipment on the side of the road and built a culture that is global, America's greatest export. I would say probably ever.
You go to any record store in Japan and they have dreads and they're playing hip hop music. Castro said that a country is judged by its culture more than anything else.
Absolutely.
And when you think of France, you think of their food and clothing. And when you think of America, you think of hip hop.
You think of hip hop and the arts, but you really think about guns first.
Well, that's
culture. Well, that's a whole other series. That's a whole other podcast.
That's true.
That's for that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now, given that we're talking about danger and risking your life, do you really, wait a second, and getting older, do you think that this will fade as you get older or increase, like Crazy Len?
You know, I'll say this to you. I believe that what we are doing, we're on a 15-year mission to neutralize the impact of racism in this country. Okay. And it goes, you inspire me even more tonight to talk about that clean air being about 15, 16 years. That's why I asked you about the time. Because we did the same thing with secondhand smoke. We just decided it was bad for everybody, and we pushed it out. We used to be able to smoke cigarettes on airplanes.
Absolutely.
And we decided that has to change.
That's really true.
And
so we did it, and it worked because everybody bought in.
Quick.
Absolutely. So for us to be able to have a movement to end to neutralize racism, and I'm just talking about the same way we did with the cigarette smokers. You can keep your racist ideas. Just take that shit outside with the rest of your friends over there. I'm talking about just clearing the space, clearing the air, clearing the space, that we're not going to have the ignorance of anti-Semitism. No, not the joke, not the little comment. We're going to be appreciative. We're just going to do that in every space. So for me, when you talk about, I see more energy for me in the future. Like, I'm not getting old. I'm brand new in this. You see, when I graduated from Plainfield High School, it did not say in my bio most likely to solve societal problems with white people. I don't have my story is not the same. I was not born for this my whole life, other than the fact about being passionate for justice. But I never expected to do it with white people. That was never even on the table. Who did that? So the fact that now we have people that I didn't know existed. Like, I'm literally honored to be sitting next to you. Like and that's why I said, to your point, to what you said was, did it help? My point is that there were just 2 million more of you. Like, if there were 2 million more white people that showed up at the March on Washington, it would have changed this country forever.
Oh, but there are.
But they didn't show up. The whole point is, when they don't show up, the rest of the people don't believe it, they don't know, and I don't have to answer to you.
But at this particular point,
now
don't
they
you
are.
get a sense that all that is changing?
They're showing up now. That's the beauty. And here's the thing I've learned, because again, I grew up thinking that it wasn't about, I grew up thinking, first I probably believed that people just didn't know. Like, just didn't know what was going on, right? But then when I realized, I learned at like 14 years old, I'm like, if I know, my teacher should probably know, and the neighbors should know. So if they don't know, then if they know, then why aren't they doing anything? They don't care. So I grew up thinking white people just didn't care. That they knew the history of this country, they knew what was happening, and they just didn't care. And then and I've navigated my life with that understanding. I could be nice to you, I'm cool with you, but when it really comes down to it, you don't care enough to be in the trap with me, in the trenches with me. So I didn't think about it. But over the last 3 years, I've met some people I just didn't know. And once they found out, they really started caring and they really started acting. So for me, that energizes me. I'm 3 years into this and have so many more new friends that want to connect the dots and do the things that can tell these stories. And the best part about it is, most of them are young people. I work with thousands of student athletes around this country at schools like Yale University and Duke and Georgetown and Sacramento State and Buffalo State and all over the country, and they are hungry for something different. And that's what we're providing, a chance to not just, see, your stories are great, but this should be a norm. Everybody should have got on the bus and gone down there. Everybody should have taken in a child. Like, everybody should have done whatever it takes. Like, you're literally disrupting a system of human trafficking. Like, that's big time stuff, but everybody could do a little bit.
That's right.
And if we do that, then we can't lose. But the problem is, all the good people, we just show up politely all the time and hope it just changes instead of being like, nah, I'm cussing through the door, we gotta make it happen.
But just figure though that already, I mean, already in terms of things changing here, at the moment we're experiencing an enormous amount of backlash.
Yes.
But that's exactly because
It's changing.
things here
Absolutely.
are changing.
100%.
Okay.
100%. Jim Crow happened because of Reconstruction. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And and we have to recognize that. And we have to, as a society, have to say, if we just keep pushing back now, we got them on the run. But we can't let up.
And you know, it is a very specific white male black group that is causing all the backlash.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The battle. Yes, it is. I'll tell you this. I believe that the front lines of white supremacy.
They'll die, by the way.
Say it again.
They'll die out.
Well, here's the thing.
They're getting older
They
and
die
older.
out, but the systems don't. And so the thing about America is, I think we used to believe that the next generation would just fix itself because the old people with these ideas would die. But this is what I've also, and you said something earlier. Everyone wants to do the right thing or wants to be an activist until they have a mortgage. So when the children of those people that might not agree with their parents up front, when it's their time to take over the bills, it's been working for granddad, it's working for dad, I'm gonna keep doing the same thing. I might feel a little different, but I'm not gonna change the switch. And here's what I say to you, that we can talk about having generations die off, but we've been dying that off for about 400 years in this country. Like, it's still here in different ways. What if we flip it, instead of saying who's gonna die off, what if we decide to raise one generation of white children focused on dismantling white supremacy? Because they're gonna get in position anyway. They're gonna get the jobs, they're gonna take over the businesses. But if they're focused on dismantling when they get there and they've learned how to identify it, when they get there, they just hit the switch the other way. So now, when grandpa dies and leaves the company, at least it's not only just a new people, but it's a new way of business. Because we're gonna be more equitable, we're gonna push back and make things fit, but you gotta teach them that.
But don't you see already many forces at work?
Absolutely, that's why I'm here.
You know, you see television.
Yeah.
I mean, the number of people who interact on television.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, 20, 30 years ago, you wouldn't have seen that. Okay.
Yeah.
So television definitely is changing. Many people are becoming educated.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and one of the things, by the way, that I sort of keep in mind, people talking about reparations, the reparations should be there in education.
Absolutely.
It should be in education, in which at some point or another, any family that was basically hurt and harmed in the course of time, I mean, they should have free college education for any kid that can do it, for instance. Don't you think that?
I would say that what the people will say is, oh, well, that's affirmative action. And those kids are getting a free ride. They're not really as smart as the white kids. They're just going in because they're black.
I wouldn't presume that.
Yeah. That is a
I wouldn't
presumption.
presume that reaction.
Oh, my son had it.
Oh no, that's going to be America's reaction. You hear
That's
that
American.
now.
Oh, yeah.
But to your point about reparations, just
Reparations is, yeah, reparations.
I'll say it this way.
Here's a good, I'm sorry. He has a terrific, because for me, because my friend gets reparations from Germany, she gets a check every month. But he has a great way of dealing with it.
You see, anti-racism is about figuring out how to fix things and how to push in the opposite direction. And sometimes when you're able to look at it just like that, you just do the opposite of what the racism was. And what I mean by that is, if you think about reparations, and I'm not just talking about for slavery, because after slavery we had Jim Crow. After Jim Crow we had mass incarceration. Like, so there's not just one, so it's a multiple generational experience. But the point is, I believe we have everything at our disposal to fix all this. I think we have enough food that we throw away every day in America to feed the hungry. I believe we have enough vacant lots to house the homeless. I believe we have all of that if we really focused on doing that. But when it comes to reparations, it's simple to me. I just think that every system, everything that was in place that black people were denied, reparations just comes in the form of them getting that now. So we didn't get the GI Bill, which allowed for education and housing. So now, if you're the family you ever have been of a black veteran, you're gonna get assistance for the housing and education.
We got red line, we didn't get
You got
the
red
mortgage.
line for housing. Like whatever's been taken, we just want it back with interest. Now here's the thing, people say, oh, that's a price tag, why should I pay that? I didn't do that. You know, it's so much new money coming into America every single day. What if we just put a 1% tax on the cannabis industry that's growing right now to $1 trillion for the next 20 years?
Well, actually, Kyle,
1%.
you should put a tax on financial transactions, all of them. All of the currency transactions in
Absolutely.
the world, the profits go 100% untaxed to banks.
Ooh.
Absolutely.
I'd put a 1% tax on all of that, and that would raise, like
A lot of money.
a lot of money, a whole lot of money.
And it wouldn't cost the average American anything.
That's the
whole
I'd tax derivatives. You go to the bank, you go anywhere, you go to the bank to get your own money.
Right.
You pay the bank to get your own money out of the bank, out of your bank, out of the bank machine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they collect that money with crisp efficiency. You could collect a financial transaction tax with crisp efficiency. And you could use that same financial system to transfer that money in cash transfers to communities all over the world where people are hungry, where they don't have schools, where they don't, where children are working, where adults are, all of that, the whole 9 yards.
We have this world, we have created more surplus than we're supposed to have.
And there is a bill before
And they should
Congress,
do that.
by the way.
To
Well,
do that?
actually, it's about to be reintroduced in September. Bernie Sanders is back.
Yay,
and he's back
Bernie.
with the financial transaction tax bill. I made a film about financial transactions. I made a film about how the aid system is just passing the hat.
Yeah.
Just passing the hat. And if you leave it up to parliaments and politicians to decide whether or not they're going to help anybody else, it's just not going to happen. You've got to move beyond the political system into the financial system and use the financial system to accomplish what you're talking about.
People think the biggest asset or the biggest value of reparations is the money going into the community. But it's actually not.
No.
Because what it actually states is it's the emotional dignity that's retrieved to a community. Say, you know what? We recognize that this was not done to you by nature. This was intentionally, you were put in this position. And now we are going to help you get out of it because we are Americans, we are whatever.
so good.
We're going to do that. Now here's the thing, because here's the thing. It's a recognized being wronged. When I talk to people about this that are on the other side of this, they claim I have a victim mentality. That's the new thing. It's just black people are victim mentalities. You want this, you want that because you're a victim.
Victims, right?
But here's the
That's
thing. One,
same as
there
his legacy
literally
thing.
have been victims that have
Yeah,
there
we
have
have been
crimes
victims,
committed.
right.
That's the first level. And no one's talking about wallowing. We're saying you do your part to fix this, and then we can work together. People don't realize that when Reconstruction started, we were getting rid of the Confederates. The whole point was these traitors to America, these Confederates, we were trying to give it to them. So we gave away all of their land. The plan was 40 acres and a mule. All those plantations that the black people worked on, now we're gonna give them back to families, 40 acres at a time, and let you do exactly what you're doing, but the government's gonna partner with you. The industry of the North, the agriculture of the South, and we're gonna rebuild places. And places like Tulsa were born, and Rosewood, and all these cities were built up for 12 years. And then the compromise came in with white
all
supremacy in
burned down.
1877, and they got taken away. So that pushback, it's always been here. The question is, where are we going to be on this part of the timeline? Do we just fall back because, oh, that was terrible what happened to George Floyd, but blah, 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 and now we're doing the same old thing 10 years? Or are we going to be in a space where we can look back and say, 2020 changed everything? Because people started talking about things like how you can pay for reparations instead of, we haven't even gotten to the bill to talk about it yet. HR 40 hasn't even passed to get into debate. Over almost 25 years, they can't get out of committee. For even you to be able to say, as a proud senator of a state, this is how we can pay for reparations. He can't even say that because the bill sits and doesn't even get out of committee.
And that's how